Now we have a few more minutes to look at the other aspect, the legislature. Back to our NOTs, our multifunctional systems. And by the way, this is being filmed, you can listen to it. We have on our webpage also more detailed explanations of all those things, so you can relax if you don't understand something or if it's getting too much. So it's back to our picture. That is me here with my outward-directed activity systems, inward-directed and self-directed. So when we talk government, the black lines would be that they are coordinating the energy supply chain, the nutrition supply chain, education supply chain, transport supply chain, and so on. This is the business of government to coordinate that and then supervise it and oversight and all that what we heard. But as an organization, as a government, you must also make sure, like I as a person need to exercise and nourish myself adequately and do stress management, you need to make sure that the members of your organization are skilled, are able to do their work, have the necessary resources available, have the necessary systems to allow them to do the work. And then as an organization, these orange ones, like I, Elisabeth, need to learn, I need to develop. You as an organization need to learn, you need to develop, you need to reflect, you need to become a knowledge organization. Because if you remember, we talked about continuous change. That means you have to continuously reflect. How does that affect us, and are we still relevant, and how do we need to do that? And you need to create the systems for that. And that is true for every organization out there. So practically every organization needs to transform now into what we call, we don't need to discuss that, matrix. Interacting, a matrix form of organization. Like in your body, the body is also working in a matrix fashion. We have the blood vessel system, which interfaces with all the other functions, and the cells take out the nutrients as they need it. So interaction of these different systems, that's what we need to create. Because what we have now, the common problems here are lack of coordination, duplication, discontinuities, undesirable emergence from individual decisions, and so on. Can I take about 10 more minutes? Complete? Now let's go back to the entity system development. Because I am a bundle of different functions, as a person, I need education development, health development, career development, and so on. Likewise, a society needs all sorts of developments, education development, housing, energy, employment, health, land development, etc. And the way we have structured our governments are that we have a national government, and then we have different departments that have function-specific strategies for housing, for education, and you can see they're in silos. Now, my experience of working in the public sector is that at the bottom, the people who actually have to do the jobs run around from stakeholder meeting to stakeholder meeting. They make these wonderful decisions of how they need to operate, they go back, and then they don't get the mandate to implement it. Does that sound familiar? The other thing that happens is that political parties start meddling at that bottom part and start to interfere with information, because we are sitting in silos. So let us look at development again from a systemic perspective. Oh yeah, no, there's one thing. So we have not only the government departments, but the private sector and the civic bodies and so on mirroring our different departments. Okay. Now let's go back to development, the previous picture. which gave rise to Department of Education, Department of Housing, Department of Energy. The truth is that all development is multidimensional. So if you're looking at education, it has a health aspect, it has an employment aspect, it has a land development aspect, a health aspect, etc. But we are looking now at those issues from the perspective of education. Now, what we need to do is we need to harness the infrastructure of education, for example, to also help us a little bit with housing development, with energy development, and so on. How can we do that? Again, here's our normal legislative, or our normal governance framework. These orange fields are issue-based planning forums. We need to plan beyond the functional level, and we need high-level issues, such as poverty, for example. High-level issues, planning issues, which would need to be planned together with stakeholders from all those institutions. So if we look at these different institutions, and we select one of those issues, literally contributions from different departments and from different functional spheres, because remember the first picture I showed you, how education is co-produced by economic, technological, political, cultural, and so on cofactors. So these people or these stakeholders need to participate in planning. So we need to create those planning forums to do those ideal designs and to also facilitate implementation planning with these parties concerned. Now my question is, how far SALSA is suited to that kind of role, if that could be a longer-term future development. This would be a facilitative role, not a decision-making role. And these orange arrows we see here is, once we have made an ideal design, we have strategies that we derive from that design. And that will be transversal strategies that we derive. So if I'm assuming that my left column here is the education system, then the black arrows are my conventional function-specific education strategies that I am operating in my, as an education department. But the orange lines are the transversal strategies that I am engaging in on behalf of other departments. And then we would have the mandate for those who run around from stakeholder meeting to stakeholder meeting, because we have an orange mandate, we have a transversal mandate. In fact, we don't need all these meetings on the ground, because we have coordinated at the top, and we have already dissolved all those little problems we have on the ground, because we have a coherent strategy that arises from the top. Now that orange blob is a planning forum, or sub-planning forum, a planning forum with many sub-planning forums. It is not an institutionalized structure. The only institutionalized structure one needs transversal, and I think that's what we have, is a facilitative structure. They facilitate if an issue like crime needs to be discussed. They have systemic facilitation skills to get the different stakeholders around the table, make a systemic design, help with creating a systemic implementation plan. And then the way we implement is each stakeholder implements the strategies it is responsible for. The private sector is responsible for different strategies than certain departments in the public sector. But we have coherence top down. And after that implementation planning has been done, these forums dissolve. They're just merely forums. All that stays is the facilitating institution that becomes now the monitoring, oversight, and so on institution. And if necessary and aims are not achieved, they call more secondary planning in a systemic way and so on. So this would be my proposal for a longer-term discussion, for a longer-term future of SALSA. Now, the sum total of even seemingly insignificant functional and transversal functional strategies dissolves a complex problem. So it is not that we need one broad strategy. We need, every stakeholder needs its strategy to co-produce, and I come back now again to the original picture. We co-produce the ideal education system, and now all these different economic, political, cultural, technological, and so on stakeholders do their little bit to co-produce the ideal outcome. And this is what system thinking, I think, has to contribute. Thank you.